Good afternoon and welcome to the Child Free Not by Choice panel. My name is Cassie Destino. I am a certified fertility doula and I am the founder of IVF Support UAE. Today we are talking about what life after trying to have a child and not being successful can feel like. We live in a society that expects women to become mothers, and when they're not, we are often asked intrusive and insensitive questions and have remarks made at us. What does that feel like? What can that life be like? And what is life like for women who have tried to have a baby or who have had a loss and not gone on to have another living child? So this is what we're going to be talking about today. We're being joined by Ada. She's been living in the UAE since 2010, and she works in education technology. And she really wanted to have children, and she tried, and eventually she stopped trying. But now she's enjoying her life with her partner. She's got a 3-year-old dog named Dante. And one of her personal goals is to be more open about her journey and how she's come to terms with not having children of her own. And she's hoping to help others and help herself. We'll also be joined by Dr. Tara Wynn, who is a clinical psychologist at the Lighthouse Arabia Clinic here in Dubai. But first, Ada, I'd really love to hear your story. Can you talk to us about how you've come to where you are today?
Thank you, Cassie. It's really lovely to be here. First, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. So I'm really flattered that you've invited me to participate in this event. It's great that we have events like this happening in the UAE. It has taken me a really long time to open up about these things and about being childless. And again, I'm grateful to you for inviting me to participate and giving me an opportunity to hopefully help others, but also help myself being more open about my journey. So you've already sort of given my name, what I do. I'm just going to add, I'm 45 years old, which sort of brings me at a point in life where I am childless and probably going to stay childless. And my journey is probably similar to that of many women my age who did not choose not to have children. There's sort of a long journey of fertility treatments, specifically around 10 years, so total of about 9 failed IVFs, and lots of things that could be said around that. But today we really want to focus on sort of coming to the other side of the tunnel and seeing the light at the end of that tunnel. And what, again, a life without children means and what it can look like, and the fact that it can actually look good, and that life cannot be all about children. And also that there are other children around us who may not be our own, but that we can sort of keep close to us, and that can help us sort of fulfill that desire to be nurturing, to be caring for others, and for young beings. So all of that.
Would you mind sharing with us a little bit of your story of the things that you did when you were trying to have a child?
Not at all. So I won't pretend it's easy, but I will try and share something. Yes. So we got married my husband and I got married the year we moved to the UAE in 2010, and we started trying to have children right away. I was 32 at the time, and at the beginning we couldn't get pregnant. We were both 32 years old at the time, and otherwise healthy and active, and sort of nothing indicated that we couldn't have children. Also, interestingly, I didn't want children very badly at the time. It was something that I always thought was potentially sort of down the line for me, but I was very focused on my career. We got married at the time because we'd been together a long time already, but we weren't necessarily ready to start a family. However, when we started trying to get pregnant and we didn't, obviously that sort of alerted us to the fact that something was going on, and that all of a sudden also sort of changed my perspective around having children. So all of a sudden I went from someone who was quite career focused and wasn't sure it was time yet to have children to like, oh gosh, no, let's actually do this because we've got to get it done. And having always been quite a high achiever in my profession, I just sort of saw it as a task that I needed to accomplish. So we were advised by doctors to try IVF, which we did over and over again. And at the beginning, they told us that it wouldn't be too difficult because we were young, because our situation didn't look too bad based on our medical reports. And so we got started without even knowing what we were getting ourselves into, to be honest, neither financially, nor physically, nor psychologically. We found a clinic here in Dubai. We visited 2 or 3 clinics. At the time, there weren't as many clinics as there are now, I have to say, which was one of the big clinics. And then it began, and it went in a blur, to be honest. There are many sort of passages of that time that I don't really remember, or I've completely removed, but in the space of 3 years, we did 5 rounds of IVF, of which, from memory, 4 rounds of stimulation, which was very aggressive and intrusive for me, and nothing, not even a pregnancy. And then you start asking yourself, like, would it be better for me to get pregnant, even if the baby doesn't arrive, because at least you feel that you've kind of achieved something. You've come maybe halfway, or maybe you've come a third of the way, or maybe you've got a few weeks of joy, to show for it. Or and I don't know what the answer to that question is, but in our case, we never got pregnant. By that stage, I was 35. The clinic sort of had reconsidered our case from very easy, you're definitely gonna get there, to we're not sure what's going on, classified us as unexplained infertility, which is a particularly frustrating thing I found in my case, to be sort of prodded and inspected and, sort of shuffled from one clinic to another, from one doctor to another. And nobody is able to tell you what's going on, what's wrong. And everyone tells you, like, there's nothing wrong, everything's fine. But then by that stage, I turned 35. So once you turn 35, they automatically classify you as old. Or I think there's a scientific term that I cannot recall.
Geriatric.
I don't know if it's geriatric, but it was something like infertility due to age, something like that. Yes.
Something equally flattering, I'm
probably
sure.
The geriatrics kicks in with like the 38 years old, which is another bracket that, yeah. But anyways, and then at that time I took a break. And I mean, I knew I was exhausted. I was really tried by the whole experience. And I took a break. I told my husband that I didn't want to continue. We were still young. And he said, yeah, totally understand, that's fine. And so I actually decided to go back to uni. And that was a good thing. It was a good thing because I sort of refocused on myself. And so a few years went by, and then I turned 38. And then by that stage, I'd finished my studies. I had advanced in my career. I was doing really well. And so I actually came back to it, and I told my husband, I said, I think I want to try this again. I'm ready now, and we left the UAE because we felt we'd get better chances of doing this if we went to Europe, which is also where I'm from. So we went to Europe. We carefully picked the clinic. Actually took a week off work to go to Spain to interview clinics. And I went with a friend, a childhood friend, whom I love very much and who's been very close to me during this journey. She's had a child through IVF. She was successful first time round. So someone that, in principle, like, we can sometimes be a little jealous of, but she was always incredibly generous with me and really supported me all the way. So we went around Spain interviewing clinics. I decided on a clinic, shared everything with my husband, of course, while I was doing the research, settled on a clinic, and then sort of set out to start my journey again with that clinic. Long story short, 3 rounds of IVF later, so we are now at round number 8, still no pregnancy, nothing. And then by that point, you know, doctors have gone from, again, being very optimistic to not so optimistic to not optimistic at all. But I'd seen the whole range. Like, you know, I'd seen the range of doctors telling you, like, you have 70 to 80% chances of success with this embryo transfer. And nothing happened. To like, we're not sure at all, which brings us to my 9th round of IVF. We're not sure at all. You know, this hasn't gone well, but it's a game of numbers. And if we keep trying, we might actually achieve our goal. And I did get pregnant once, but I don't know that it's actually called a pregnancy, more like what they call a biochemical pregnancy. But I did get one positive test through my 9 rounds of IVF. And interestingly, it was the one round where we had gone to the Czech Republic. So my journey sort of spans across 3 countries, the UAE, Spain, and the Czech Republic. That was by far the cheapest round of IVF we've done. Probably the sort of the quickest, because they are very not about frills over there. You know, I was in and out of the clinic quick. But then 14 days later, I got a positive test, and I was like, oh my God, I cannot even believe this. And I mean, of course, we were just overwhelmed with joy and just ecstatic. But it didn't last very long, because about a week later, the follow-up tests showed a drop in values, and then clearly whatever had happened was not going to continue. It was particularly ugly, I have to say, because also when I got my period that month, it was a particularly sort of strong bleed. And I mean, I don't know if this is going to be too graphic to share, but I think I saw that biochemical pregnancy go, and that was really the measure for me. So if you were going to ask me, when did you decide that you wouldn't continue with IVF, that was that.
That was it. So that for you was, you weren't willing to continue putting yourself through that and going through that.
Honestly, not. Life cannot be only about that. And I think every woman who's going through this journey will reach a point where they will know. I always told myself, we'll do it 10 times. I was saying it jokingly. I'd say, like, you know, we give ourselves 10 tries, and if we don't get a baby by the 10th try, we'll stop. I was always saying this as a joke, because I never thought that I would not be successful in 10 tries. Yeah. But then at the 9th round, I knew that that was it. It was just like my body couldn't take it anymore. My mind couldn't take it anymore, above all. And we just like thought there's got to be more to life than just overwhelmingly wanting a baby. We need to sort of refocus our energy and our positivity and our love for life somewhere else. So that's what we did.
I wanted to say I appreciate you sharing that in the way that you have. It's such a private and you know, kind of, I think relentless experience for several years in your life. And when we say I did 3 rounds, and then I did 6 rounds, and I did 9 rounds, I don't know that people really understand the sacrifices and the kind of singularity of focus, and almost the, you know, kind of the narrowing of your life, your lens, how you see yourself, how you see your partner, how you see success or accomplishment. Everything becomes narrowed to within the realm of, did we get pregnant or not? And of course, in that many years, you will have done so many other things, or maybe meant so many other things, or accomplished other things, but none of them turn up on the radar because they aren't getting pregnant. And I think also our spirit or our psyche gets really tired of only being defined by something that didn't happen. And so I think, I'm sure there's so many other things during those years, but they're so much characterized in your life as what never happened. But as Cassie and I have spent much time together with this community of women going through these experiences, we know that there is a stoic kind of soldiering forward and like a conviction and a belief that is like nothing else, that you're going to keep trying. And I'm really struck by your wisdom to know when it was enough, because that's also a really hard thing for many women, to know when is enough and when perhaps they're going to lose something essential in themselves.
Thank you. You've said it very well. Stoic is a good word. For me, I don't know that it was difficult to stop, to be honest. I think it was probably a little more difficult to accept the consequences of stopping. The stopping came natural. It was more like of a physical gut reaction when I knew my body just couldn't take it anymore. Couldn't take it down here, couldn't take it up here.
Yeah, I think so much of what keeps us going when we are on a path with infertility is that we get lots of feedback from the people around us and the world around us. Where's your baby, madam? You've been married for so many years. When are you having a baby? And where's my grandchild? And where's my, where's a cousin for my child? And all of these other messages. Can you talk a little bit about what did your family and friends, did they know you were going through all of this fertility treatment? And when you decided to stop, what was their reaction? What were the other people in your life? How did they support you or not support you? And how did they respond?
Thanks for this question. It's really thoughtful. I mean, it was really, really hard for me to admit that I was going through this. And for the longest time, I didn't tell anybody. In fact, I would say that the first few years when we were doing IVF here in the UAE, and we did 5 rounds, so no joke, we didn't tell anybody. In fact, that was like a clear thing, a clear pact that I made with my husband, was that we were not going to tell anybody, because fundamentally, the bottom line in one word, I was ashamed. And as a high achiever in other fields of my life, I just did not really want to talk about it. I saw this as a shortcoming, and I know rationally that it shouldn't be seen that way, but it's just, you cannot help the way you feel, and that's how I felt. And that didn't help me, by the way. In hindsight, I know that it was not a good decision. Now, I had a psychologist at the time, and it's not that I wasn't advised to open up more and to get a support network. I just genuinely struggled doing that. I was too proud. So we didn't tell our families for a long time. When we did, this is actually a really painful sort of step in our struggle with infertility, because I think our families struggled to react in the way that maybe we were expecting. I think I was expecting sort of immediate support, immediate empathy, but actually the reaction we got was a little more blunt than that. I think their reaction was the reaction of parents who just realized that they may not have grandchildren. And so in a way, my grievance was becoming their grievance too. Also, my husband isn't, luckily for him, but I'm an only child. So when I told my parents, I didn't actually think about this, and only sort of through years of reflection, I've come to understand their reaction. But their reaction was not a reaction of support or immediate support or affection, or I'm sorry about this, or how are you doing? They didn't ask me how I was doing. They actually asked me what could be done about it, which again made me feel more inadequate, because I felt like, well, I'm doing all I can about this, but it's just not happening. And that created sort of some further aggravation, I have to say. And I know that many people feel triggered by, strangers coming to them, like, oh, when are you going to have children? Or do you have any children? Why do you not have children? I personally don't really care about strangers coming to me asking me that. I mean, it's none of their business, and I don't care what strangers think. But I do care about what my family thinks. And yes, there was that added sort of weight of feeling that you've let other people down. Like, you might have let your parents down because they're not going to have grandchildren. And again, in the case of my parents, that was, it was the only chance they had because they only have me. There's that sense of legacy, right? Like, what's your legacy? Who are you going to sort of, who's going to continue your bloodline? It sounds like a really silly thing. And if someone was talking about that to me, under different circumstances, I might have not taken that seriously, but now I actually know what that feels like, and it's a burning feeling. So telling others wasn't easy, to go back to your question. But for me, the most difficult part was telling the people close to me, because I felt that this would not only hurt me, but might also hurt them. And in some ways, unfortunately, it does.
It is interesting how much, interesting, it's not the right word, but how much guilt and shame gets baked into women's experiences of the world, and how, so much of infertility and childlessness ends up feeling like a failing on our part from our body. And, most of the time it absolutely isn't, but that is what sort of gets projected. And that's what I think women are sort of taught to carry. I've done something, I've let it down. I've been able to give you a child or a grandchild. And not only are you dealing with everything that you're dealing with, but you're also carrying that guilt and that shame, which just compounds an already difficult situation.
100%. I would agree with you, Cassie. It's almost like since women were young, all we grow up hearing is people being very transactional about having children. When will you have them? When are you going to start? How many do you want? How many grandchildren will you give me? Even the way we speak about it is though it's a foregone conclusion. It's a transaction that if you want it, you can have it and you will do it. And I think this is where we never have that psychological flexibility from when we're being raised, either to say that this may not happen, I may not want this may not be part of my journey, something may occur where I can't have this. None of these things are baked into the formula. It's very transactional. If you want children, you'll have them, and you will have them at X time and this amount. And so I think it really deepens the injury that women can feel if they struggle. And it also allows other people to be very insensitive, even if they don't want to be. It's because the whole idea is, well, if a woman wants to have a child, then of course she'll go ahead and have one. And I think this is where we have so much work to do about bringing people to becoming more tentative, more sensitive, more curious about whether that's even something that everybody wants. And if they want it, maybe it is not immediately going to happen. And that's missing right now, isn't it? The curiosity, the sensitivity, the tentativeness around it.
Ada, one thing that you mentioned was that you don't really care what other people think about whether or not you have children. If somebody asks you, or maybe if you see around back to school time and everyone's posting pictures of their children going back to school and everyone's posting the Mother's Day cards, and you were saying that you feel all right with that. Can I ask you, do you have a sort of prepared statement that you make if you're getting your nails done, for example, and they just say, "Oh, how many children do you have, madam?" I know that is a thing that happens, especially here in the UAE.
Yeah.
How do you respond in those situations, and what does that cost you?
So I'll start with answering the final part of your question. So luckily, again, with strangers, it doesn't cost me so much. It's with people close to me that it costs me more. But quite often you get those questions from people close to you too. And they'll start because they just, it's one of these questions that's been asked since the dawn of days. And, when are you going to have children? How many children do you have? Or are you... So this is when it's a little bit difficult to respond for me. But, and as I've said, for a long time, I was not really ready to say, "Oh, I don't have children. I don't want to have children. I'm not going to have children, or I'm trying to have children." So I was just sort of deflecting the question and diffusing and just saying like, "Oh, yeah, maybe in future, maybe one day." And because I was always quite career driven, for a long time, that answer was believed. I think everyone thought that I was one of these women who are all about work. And then, one day they're going to realize they're 40 years old and they're going to try and get pregnant. And then many of these women do get pregnant, right? So, I mean, the idea is, I was sort of trying to depict my situation as one of those so that people would not ask further questions, and also so that I could give the impression that that I could have children when I wanted them. Now then, with years passing by, two things happened. Firstly, I did a lot of work on myself because, you've got to get these things out of your system. Otherwise, you're never going to get better and digest them. I mean, part of being childless, having wanted to be childless and not losing your mind is again, just and also getting out all the sort of the negative thoughts and all the things that you've accumulated over the years. So I knew that I needed to start talking about it. And also, the older you get, of course, the less that response is gonna be accepted, because people are going to start saying, "Okay, but maybe in future, but when?" Because now you're 40, and now you're 41, now you're 42, and so forth. So that's when I started saying, so my tagline response is, depending on how, whether I want to get a follow-up questions or I want to cut out follow-up questions, I'll be like, "Oh, they haven't come." When you say they haven't come, usually people don't ask anymore. Some might say like, "Oh, really? I'm really sorry. I didn't know that," or "I didn't know you had been trying." But usually only the people closer to you will ask you that. So to answer your question, Cassie, my tagline response is, they haven't come. Usually the lady at the nail salon won't ask anymore because she doesn't care fundamentally. She's just trying to make conversation. And she doesn't really want to get into a deep discussion. Whereas your relative, your friend who didn't know you had been trying and, sort of is confronted with something that can be quite a substantial conversation, well, typically they'll ask you like, "Oh, if they want to talk about it, they'll say like, "Oh, do you want to talk about it?" Or "I had no idea." And if they don't want to talk about it, which quite frankly sometimes is a relief, depending on the person and depending on the time, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know," or "I'm sorry about this." And that's appreciated. It's actually, for a long time, I felt that I didn't want people to feel sorry for me, because I didn't want anyone's pity. But actually now I've really started to appreciate what it does when people tell you, I'm sorry. And it makes you feel like that they see you, that they hear you, that they, and then it also makes you feel that you know you've tried, right? Because unfortunately, if you have that mindset where you work hard and you get something, which is a mindset that many sort of hardworking women have, it's just like it acknowledges that you've tried, and then it tells you that it's okay.
And can you, oh, sorry, Tar, did you have something to add? Okay. So as you've made this adjustment, as you've changed your thinking about what your life was going to be, can you talk about some of the things that you did to help you make this adjustment? Were there other things that you tried to do to focus your energy and attention? And how have you sort of come to the point where, it sounds like you're in a pretty good place with things. Can you talk about the tools you use to sort of get you there?
Yes. Thanks for that question. This is the best part, right? Like, I think once you sort of close that door and you know that you're no longer going to focus your energy and efforts into pursuing something that at the end of the day is not going to happen for you. And as sad and harsh as it is a reality, it is a reality. And for me, again, closing that door was a really important sort of step, following which we did 3 things, my husband and I, always together. And luckily, we've always been sort of a strong couple through this. It's not easy also to sort of retain that alignment of thinking. But luckily that was not a problem for me. So 3 things. The first thing is that I decided to proactively reconnect with my family. My side of the family, my husband's side of the family. So we sort of each did it individually with our side of the family and then together with sort of everyone. I mentioned I'm an only child, so I don't have siblings, which has been somewhat sort of making this being childless decision even more complicated, because that's why you literally realize like I don't even have direct nieces and nephews that I can consider like that I can leave my things to, or that I can see grow up, or like. But I sort of reconnected with my cousins, and I had a very open conversation with them. And I said what had happened, and I said, I'd really like to be closer to your children. Will you let me do that? Will you please let me be part of your children's lives a little bit more closely, because I really care about this. And they were all extremely welcoming. Well, firstly, they were all very supportive, and they all said that they felt sorry and that they would love, for me to be closer to their children. And clearly, they saw that there was so much that their children could get from me, and that not only that I could get from being closer to their children. Actually, some of my nieces and nephews, they call me the cool aunt, because I've kept young and youthful. Obviously, I travel a lot. I spend money on clothes, and I buy them lots of gifts. So that's been really rewarding. Another thing that we did, and I know this is going to sound a little shallow and a little sort of, I don't know, I don't want to compare children to pets, but for us, getting a pet was a blessing. I love my dog. He has enriched my life in ways that I would have never thought would be possible. There is a bit of an issue there, because I do sometimes treat my dog as if he were a child. I'm aware of that. I'm very open about it. I tell all my friends, you ladies have your kids. I have my dog. If my dog is sick, I'm with my dog. My dog sleeps with me, and he comes on holidays with us, and he's extremely spoiled, and I love him to bits. But he has really, really enriched our lives, I would say. And again, I know it's not a good comparison, but for me, the dog has really sort of brought that element of, you know, having a little being that you are raising and that you are looking after. And the third thing is that, you know, we've also sort of made some more practical considerations. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, we are still quite young, and we still have a lot of energy. So, you know, we have decided to focus on ourselves, literally. We have invested more in doing the things that we like, because I mean, one of the few sort of flip sides of not having children is also that you maybe don't need to save as much money. We've actually reassessed our position with respect to work. Maybe we don't need to work as long. Perhaps we can sort of stop working a little bit younger than we expected, and then go traveling. And you know, I think for those who really wanted to build a family, you know, having as a backup plan, being closer to your nieces and nephew, or getting a pet, or getting more time to travel, or more money to travel, or, you know, having to work a little bit less because you don't need to save as much for the future. I know it is a backup plan, and it's not necessarily what you know, we would have chosen, but it's still a rich life, and you know, we take things as they come, and I would say particularly the being close to family has been extremely enriching. Although being expats here in the UAE, we're not so close, and many will relate to that. I think if we lived in the same country, that probably would have been, we would have done a lot more for our nieces and nephews, but they do live quite far away. So extended family, extended network, I mean, friends as well. There have been some friends who have been extremely close to me, and continue to be close to me. My friend who helped me set up my IVF pursuit in Spain, and her girl, who's now 8 years old, I mean, she's very adamant that I stay close to her girl as if I were an actual aunt. So she literally wants me to be very involved with her girl's life. And all these things are, you know, they make our life rich, and
yeah, it sounds like
and fill it with joy.
It sounds like you found some really useful tools to help you. We only have a few minutes left, but Tara, I would love to hear from you a little bit about the role that therapy can play when we are making these kinds of big transitions in the way we were expecting our lives to go.
Yeah. I think it's whatever the part 2 of your life is going to be, you need to come to terms and reconcile that part 1 maybe, or the first phase of trying to have a baby, didn't go the way that you wanted. And I think rather than that just being something that I can't control or I can't change, it's about maybe attaching meaning to it, attaching, you know, seeing yourself as quite heroic in some ways for what you tried to do, the fight that you gave it, knowing that the thing that you wanted, you gave it everything. I think sometimes when you're on your own, just thinking about yourself, you don't see yourself from these vantage points. You don't give yourself that credit. Sometimes you just focus on what didn't work. And I think therapy helps to add many different perspectives. I think it gives meaning to even loss. I think it helps us grieve. I think it can actually allow you to have someone who will push you, and even maybe provoke you and challenge you to imagine what other versions of you there can be. And sometimes parents actually can live a very limited life because they are very busy with children. They don't get to look at other parts of them. They disown them, in fact, and only maybe when those children are older do they come back and say, gosh, I don't really know that I know myself. I don't know that I've been the best version of me. And I think a therapist can really help you be respectful to what you wanted, but also say, but what else are you? What other parts are there? What else can add meaning to your life? What else can you accomplish with the time, the energy, the focus that you now have? And so it's a journey. It's someone going through not just the loss and the pain, but actually the redevelopment, the regeneration of identity, purpose, a vision, really, which, because you've spent so much time attaching yourself to a way of thinking or being or a future, can be really helpful when someone guides you to what else is there, and what other things do you value, and how else can you either be, as Ada said so beautifully, how else can you nurture and be a mother in the world, but what else can you be apart from that? And I think therapy can also help us not go into so many of the spirals that we do with our own thinking, with again getting stuck with the defectiveness and the shame and the, you know, what I never had. Having a companion can really help you to acknowledge that you feel that way, but, you know, perhaps pull you forward, give you more hope, give you more perspective. I mean, I know, Ada, you've said you did do some therapy, actually.
Yes, lots.
And maybe you can reflect on how it may also have helped you.
Ladies, I'm sorry. I'm afraid that we are at our time. We have another
Oh.
panel that's starting right now. And so I
Okay.
do have to say goodbye to you, but not before I thank you so much. Ada, you are
Thank you.
a beautiful and compelling speaker. You have a
Thanks.
powerful story and you tell it very well. And
Thank you for inviting me.
you're incredibly generous today. And I thank you so much.
And I'm
Tara,
all for
thank you.
psychotherapy, by the way. Totally recommend it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It's
Bye-bye.
been a pleasure to speak with both of you today. I wish you both a peaceful rest of your day. And thank you so much for your time. Thank
See
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.